While everybody jumps on, I would love to know where you're all dialing in from. I see some familiar names. It would be great to just jump in the chat and just drop a quick where you're from, where you're calling in from. Germany. Nice. Liana coming in from Lebanon. Vince. Nice. We've got some Egypt, Mexico, India, Latvia. Wow. Belgium, California, Quebec, Canada, nice. Toronto, Canada. Shout out to the Canadians. Ukraine, UK, Milan, beautiful place. Nice. Lewis from the UK, Nicole, Silicon Valley. Nice. We are covering the country or the world, the globe. I love it. This is my COVID hair, Cindy. You can see a big difference between this and the little avatar. Did anybody else get a COVID hair over the last year or so, grow it out and decided that they were going to keep it? I know not everybody grows beards, but if you can grow a beard, did anybody else decide to go down that path? Yeah, nice. Or let the dye out and then you got the new color. You're back to your original roots. Got Bianca from LA. Nice. Chris, grow it. Yes. Keep it. No. Fair enough. I like it. Toronto for simplicity's sake. Yes. Andrew. Burlington. Beautiful spot. Love it. Washington State. Paris. Never been, but I have to make my way over there at some point. It's awesome. Another Italy. I proposed to my now wife in Italy. Gorgeous spot. Got to get back. Châteauneuf-du-Pape as well. I've been there. I've been to Rome, Italy, all over these places. Some of these places I've been. Some of these places are on my bucket list. I shall return. Burgundy, nice. Very cool.
Cool. It looks like we're leveling out a little bit. So Ross, I think it's time we can jump in and get started.
I think so. I think now is a perfect time to jump in. So let's do it.
And just as a quick introduction, so my name's Evan from the BuzzSumo team. And a quick piece of housekeeping, so I might forget to mention in a second. If you have questions, pop them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We can't promise we get to everything, but we're going to save some time at the end of the call and really try our best to make sure we answer your questions. And with that being said, we're really, really excited about what we have in store for you today. And that's because we're being joined by Ross. And he's probably someone who does not need a big introduction, but just I'm going to forge ahead with one anyway. So not only is Ross a content marketing expert, and he can back that up because we built a data-driven list of the top 100 content marketers. It's ranked number 3 of all content marketers out there. But he's also a serial entrepreneur. So he's not only somebody who walks the walk, but he talks the talk, and that he understands content marketing strategies on the cutting edge of content marketing strategy, but also deeply understands how that drives value for a business overall. So with that quick introduction, Ross, we're really excited what you have in store for everybody today. And I think I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me, Evan. Really appreciate it. And huge shout out to the BuzzSumo team. I appreciate the honor to be named number 3. I am going to take that seriously and try to be number 1 eventually, but I do appreciate the honor. And folks, I'm super excited to be here. I'm super excited to chat about a topic that I am deeply passionate about, which is content distribution. And I'm excited to see so many different people from different worlds and different spaces. Very quickly, before we jump into it, could you drop into the chat just your job title, what your job title is, because I'm always curious to know what type of folks are interested in content distribution. Are you an SEO? Are you a PPC? Are you in the content marketing? Are you content manager, online editor? Nice. So we're seeing some strategists, some specialists. Cool. Love it. Director, podcast host. Oh, you're going to get a ton of value out of this. Music entrepreneur, you're going to get a ton of value. VAs, love it. You're going to get value. I think this is going to be an amazing thing. And I know that doesn't sound humble, but it's not meant to be. I really hope that I can give you folks a lot of value in this session. So thank you so much for joining me. Really looking forward to it. And to start this all off, I am going to get personal with you folks. I'm going to get personal for a second because I have a confession to make. And this is something that I've carried with me for a very long time. And I've got two confessions and I'm going to make them right now. The first confession, though, is this. At the beginning of the slide, it said 23 ways to create once and distribute forever. I lied. I'm not just going to cover 23. We're probably going to go through 55 or so. So there's going to be a lot. There's going to be a lot of things that you will be able to take from this and start to distribute your content from. And my goal is to give you some techniques that are tactical so you can run with it. That's always my goal, is to make sure that people can actually take things that I talk about, don't just feel good and get a bit of adrenaline and motivation to feel like they should distribute some things, but that you can actually go and do the thing. So there's more than 23. That's my first confession. My second confession is the fact that this is something that has impacted my career for a very, very long time. I'm kind of lucky over the last year or so to not have been forced to go to networking events. And the reason why is because when I go to networking events, as much as I like them, as much as I enjoy them, I often run into a very, very big problem. And that is the fact that I'm a wanderer. And when I say I'm a wanderer, what I'm talking about is this. My mind typically wanders in a whole bunch of different directions when I'm talking to somebody at these networking events. I could be talking to you and having a deep conversation about marketing, about vertical video, about social media, etc. But quickly my mind will wander to a dialogue that's happening feet, if not kilometers, miles away. It happens often. And one day I went to a marketing event and I was chatting with the gentleman about the rise of vertical video. And this is when the world of TikTok was just starting to get started. And I was really excited about vertical. And I still think vertical video is a massive opportunity. But I was talking to this gentleman, but my mind started to drift. It started to drift where he was standing inches from my face. And if you've ever seen Charlie Brown and they're having the conversation with the mom where the combo is like, wah, 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 and you don't really know what the mom is saying, that's what happened. My brain wandered to a point where I didn't know what he was saying at all. It was so bad because my mind drifted to a conversation about butter. Now, you might think this guy has an obsession with butter because even on Foundation's website, it says your content marketing engine is going to run as smooth as butter. I do. I have an obsession with butter, but that's besides the point. The point is, I was enthralled with a debate that two people were having between whether or not you should keep the butter in the fridge or the butter on the counter. And I was completely blanked out on this guy. He was having this conversation. I couldn't help but listen to this dialogue. It was so bad. My wife, who joined me on this at this conference, I introduced her as my butter half. I was embarrassed. If I could blush and turn purple or something, I would have been blushing. I would have been beet red, but that doesn't really work with the melanin stuff. So I didn't blush, but I would have been. I would have been blushing a ton. I got home and I was like, what happened? Like, how did my brain make this hiccup to look off into the distance and be like my butter half? And I realized that there's actually something that all of us have the ability to do. It's called the cocktail party effect. When you are in a setting where there is a ton of noise, a ton of chaos, you have the ability to focus and shift your attention even amidst a chaotic amount of noise, even amidst somebody talking and standing right in front of your face, to isolate and filter through all of that noise, to be laser focused on a single stream of sound. And that's what I was able to do. And it's something that I do often inadvertently. It's something that happens all the time. Now, you might be wondering, Ross, what in the world does butter have to do with marketing? Well, let me explain to you. Here's the thing. The internet is the loudest cocktail party ever. There is so much noise. Everywhere you go, there's tweets, there's Facebook posts, there's LinkedIn posts, there's status update, there's new tweets, there's snaps, there's tons of dings and dongs coming our way every single day on social media. Content itself has taken over the web and it has never been noisier than it is today. Right now, as you're listening to me, some of you also have another tab open where you're looking at a Google Doc. Some of you are inside of a Slack channel. Some of you are on Twitter. Some of you are on Facebook. And I know I'm calling you out right now. Some of you are doing that instead of watching me. It's okay. I hear you. I feel you. It is a constant stream of information. But marketers, guess what? Guess what? At the end of the day, marketers, it is all our fault. It's our fault for making the world this noisy because folks have been preaching at the top of their lungs for years. Content is king. Create more content. Create. And the world has listened. More people are creating content than ever before. And we have gone into a state and a mode within organizations and within businesses where we're essentially saying, Yes, content rules everything around me. Shout out to Wu-Tang for this acronym. I've stolen it from them. But that sentiment and that idea is something that truly a lot of people have embraced. This idea that content is everything, that content is the only thing that matters. You have to create, 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 create. And I'm going to challenge that idea today, because as much as it is real that there's more content than ever before, it has never been harder to get your content in front of the right people. Why? Because when you look at the things that have recently started to happen in Google with the SERP, you can start to see the information that you would have been once able to publish on your website, on a landing page, etc. Google is now scraping and placing directly in the SERP. So Google is no longer a place in which you get traffic sent to your website. It is now a destination where when I'm looking to compare two cameras, Google's going to show me the imagery of those cameras as well as the entire grid. This used to happen on a website. This used to happen on wirecutter.com. It's no longer happening there. It's happening directly in the SERP. The same thing is happening to books, right? You can type in books back in the day and you would go to a nice blog post, a nice website that is dedicated to book reviews, good reads, etc. All of these sites. And now Google's taking all of that information, selling books as well, directly through their store, directly through Google Play on their website, on Google, right? Google is no longer just a place that sends you traffic. It is your competitor. Google is taking information that you would have created a blog post on. If you were a food blogger and you created a piece of content on, these are the foods that you need to eat or to improve your skin health, you would used to be able to capture all that traffic. Today, Google is saying right in their SERP, tomato, water, green tea, egg as food. See, they're still working on the whole natural language processing thing, but they're trying, right? Like they're trying to get it. But that is a part of the process. Google is essentially becoming a destination. If you're trying to figure out the difference between quartz and granite, you no longer have to go to that website. Google's scraping it directly from Forbes and they're placing it there. You get your answer and on to the next thing. This is what you're competing against. So yes, you can create the content, but is the content going to serve you as well as it did in the past? Not even close. It's becoming more and more challenging to win, not just because of Google, but also because of social media platforms. When you look at Facebook, the number of posts that are being published week and week after week, month after month, year after year, it is continuing to climb. But the interaction rates on these pieces, on these posts, as we embrace the cream of content, create, 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 the actual amount of interactions happening are going down. I believe Facebook played the best bait and switch ever, where they convinced all of us as marketers. Some of you may not have been in there at these early days, but they convinced us that we should pay to get likes. And now we have to pay to reach the people who like us on Facebook, right? Greatest bait and switch in business history. Content is no longer king. Distribution is. I believe we need to get away from that acronym of CREAM. We need to move towards DREAM. And DREAM is the idea of distribution rules everything around me. So I want to throw a poll out here. I want to throw a poll out to do a gut check around how you are investing in creation versus distribution. So if you are not commuting, shout out to some of the folks who are. I don't want you to do two things at once, so you don't have to take part in the poll. But if you aren't and you are here with us, I have a poll. I want to ask you a question. How much time are you spending creating content on a monthly basis? There's a quick poll that's going to show up. Just select 0 to 10 hours, 10 to 50 hours, or over 50 hours. How much time are you or your team spending a month creating content? I would love to get a glimpse into your creation investment as an org, as a person, as a team. How much time do you spend per month creating? It could be creating podcasts, it could be creating blog posts, it could be creating music, webinars, you name it. How much time is being put into the creation of content today on a monthly basis? And then after that, I want to ask another question, which is the flip side. How much time are you spending? Oh, this is interesting. So here are the results. The results are showing the vast majority, 53%, are spending between 10 to 50 hours, 20% over 50 hours. That's a lot. So we're looking at over 70, nearly 75% spending over 10 hours. And then less than 30% spending 0 to 10. Fascinating. Okay, another question. And this question is the exact same, except we're going to ask about distribution. So how many of you are spending between 0 and 10 hours distributing your content, 10 to 50 hours distributing your content, or over 50 hours distributing your content? I'm curious to know this one. How much time are you spending doing the promotion side, spending the time to actually promote your content, taking those things that you're investing in, that you're creating, those webinars, those podcasts, those blog posts, etc. How much time are you taking on a monthly basis to now distribute those things? Love it. I see Rob spending over 100 hours a month. I love that. Whoa, look at these numbers. 68% 0 to 10 hours, 10 to 50, 29%, and only 3% 50 plus hours. Folks, let's have some fun. This is going to be great. This, to me, is everything. So after you press publish on all of that content, you're probably wondering, okay, Ross, this is great. I get it. The algorithms are changing. The SERP is changing. How do I give my content more life? How can I spread my content better? Well, the first thing you need to do is you need to understand your audience, right? You have to discover where they are, where they're spending time. That's the fundamentals. That's the basics of true marketing. I think there's a big issue in the industry right now where we view content marketing as being content instead of content marketing, right? Like we're not thinking about the marketing side. And on the marketing side, we have to go focus on the people. We have to figure out where they're spending time. That's why we use great tools like BuzzSumo to understand like how many of our people are spending time on this channel sharing certain types of content. Lots of insights you can gather there. So once you do that, you create the content and then you distribute it. So I want to talk through how you can embrace a new mindset, which is simple. It's create once, distribute forever. Let's talk about this a little bit deeper. But first, I want to give you a few tactical insights around how you can discover where your audience is. And one of my favorite ways to do it is through things like Facebook Audience Insights. Now, not a lot of people love Facebook. A lot of people don't like Facebook at all. Get it? That's not what we're here to discuss. We're here to discuss the fact that it is a great channel to use to better understand your audience and understand people. So what you're able to do with Facebook Audience Insights is get a good glimpse into demographics, good glimpse into location, into household, into purchase behavior, into the things that they like, etc. You can go into Facebook and you can actually say, I'm interested to connect with fathers. And when you go into this, you'll quickly be met back with the categories of the types of pages that fathers on Facebook actually follow on Facebook. So you can get insights into, okay, they're following the NFL, they're following the UFC. I can see that they're following Buffalo Wild Wings. I see that they like to drink Bud Light and Dasakis. Okay, that's interesting. It means dads don't like good beer. I can see that they're following Larry the Cable Guy, Kevin Hart, all of these things. These are insights that you can use to say, okay, maybe we need to spend time sponsoring UFC podcasts, NFL podcasts. Maybe we need to be thinking about how we can partner with Buffalo Wild Wings, all of these different things. You can even go down to the geographic level where you can start to get specifics into, we want to target people in a specific city. So if you're from Germany, if you're from Chennai, if you're from Berlin, like any of these places, you can get that specific and say, what are people around me interested in? And Facebook will give you that. Now, this is where it gets really valuable from a distribution lens. When you start to look at things like fashionable mothers, so these are moms who also like Chanel, who also like Gucci, who like all of these fancy brands, you start to uncover insights like, oh, look, they're following a page called Mia. Now, I don't know about you, but when I did this research, I had no idea who Mia was. Never heard of it, not a brand that I'm familiar with, but they have 12 million likes. That means 12 million people follow this page. And if fashionable mothers are following this page, maybe there's an insight here where I can engage with this community, where I can send a message to Mia and ask them, hey, would you be able to partner with me or maybe share a piece of content that I created because I think your audience is going to find it interesting. That's the type of opportunity that you can do when you start to get closer to your audience and start discovering where they are. Another thing that you can do on Facebook that I think is massively valuable is recognize, first and foremost, one of the biggest opportunities is the fact that Facebook groups have been around for a very long time. And there are a lot of Facebook groups that are dedicated to people that are relevant to your audience. No matter if you're targeting SaaS entrepreneurs, whether you're targeting marketers, whether you're targeting musicians, whether you're targeting dads, moms, whether you're targeting people who are obsessed with barbecue, you're obsessed with vegan food, no matter what type of community and niche and interests you're trying to connect with, I can promise you that there is probably a Facebook group that is filled with your audience. Because here's the thing, there are 1 billion monthly active users using Facebook groups. Why? Because Facebook has this new mission of they want to connect the world, and the best place to do that isn't with the people you already know in your friends list, it's with other people. So they're creating these groups and they're investing time and energy in optimizing the group experience. And if you can find groups where your audience is spending time, guess what you can do with that content that you've created? You can start to share it in these groups. You can start to seed it in these groups. You can look for threads on topics that are relevant to your business, your industry, and share your links in those comments and in those threads. You could sponsor these different groups. You can even hire and maintain a relationship with the moderators of these groups, so they're putting up posts in these groups every single month on your behalf. Or you can acquire the group itself. You can reach out and say, I want to buy this group from you. I want to own it. And you can do that as well. And if you don't find a group, you can create your own. You can create a group that is specialized in your interest, in your industry, your audience, and get those people to join it. And when they're in there, you have now opened up a direct lane of communication with that audience where you can share your content. So when you press publish on that piece of content, on your blog, on your website, a webinar, a podcast, whatever it may be, you don't just share it out to your social media followers. You also are going to send it to this group of people who have self-identified as being Shopify entrepreneurs or your brand users, etc., and seed your content into them. Again, remember the model that we briefly touched on, but this is the most important thing to keep in mind, folks. You create these pieces of content once, and you distribute those pieces of content forever. And if you can embrace and leave here with that mindset, I think you will have a successful content marketing engine. Because here's the thing, a lot of you have already produced a ton of content. How many of you in the chat, just let me know, how many of you have created over 5 pieces of content in 2021? How many of you just say, yes, yes, I have. I've created over 5 pieces of content. Look at that, 5 today. Amazing, right? Like a lot of people have already created a ton of content. Here's the thing, folks. Some of you will say, Ross, I create 5 pieces of content every month, every week. Some of you don't need to create more content. Some of you don't even need to create any more content for the rest of this year. What you need to do is take the old content that you've developed and distribute it. But again, you need to know how to do that. And I'm going to talk you through that a little bit further as well. So here's another opportunity that exists that I think is slept on Facebook. And then we're going to jump into some other items. But Facebook groups and Facebook pages, as I mentioned, have been around for a very long time. I love engineering. This is a Facebook group that only would have people who follow it. In fact, 92,000 people who love engineering. But the last time this page put up a post was January 11th, meaning, the person who runs a page with 92,000 followers isn't maintaining it anymore. What does that mean? It means you have the opportunity to send them a message, just like I did to a page a few years back where I said, hey, I noticed that this page hasn't been active since 2015. Would you sell it? And they said, yes, I'll sell it for $5,000. I said, thoughts on a better price? Didn't even have to negotiate, right? Like I'm purely a very nice Canadian guy. I was just like, what's your thoughts on a lower price? He said he dropped out $2,000 on the back of that. I was able to acquire that page for $3,000 and then make $3,000 within 2 months of promoting a product that was relevant to the audience that owned that page in the first place. Now, if some of you have had on your cocktail party effect because you're like, Ross, Facebook is not where my audience is. I target engineers. I target CTOs. I target accountants. Facebook is not where my audience is. Stop sleeping on it. ComScore recently did a study and they found that in fact, even amongst B2B decision makers, Facebook is the #1 channel in which people are spending time. Why is this true? Because guess what? People are people. We're still humans. We're not just corporate suits that wake up every day and are talking about KPIs and AdWords and algorithms. Like we're still people. We're going on Facebook to connect with our children. We're going to connect with our friends, our families, our grandkids, people from high school, all of these different things, right? Like we are doing that on a regular basis. So before you write off Facebook as being a channel just for the B2C folks, remember, we are still selling to people. Create once, distribute forever. That is the essence of this talk. And this is the essence of what I believe every marketer needs to be thinking about, every marketer needs to understand as we go through a time where it's easier than ever to create content, but becoming more and more difficult to stand out. So how do you think about this, folks? How do you think about this? You think about it in this way. And I'm glad that Xian just asked this question about whether or not you should be creating consistent different content for different groups. This is the flow chart. You take one original asset, one piece of content, and then you're going to spread it. You're going to spread it in different formats across different channels. You're going to take one blog post and you're going to turn that blog post into a LinkedIn post. You're going to take that one blog post and you're going to turn it into a podcast. You're going to take that one podcast and you're going to turn it into an audio clip. There are so many things that you can do when you create once and distribute forever. And every org is going to be different because every org is going to have an audience that is different, right? Every audience is going to be using different channels in different spaces. So how should you be thinking about this? If you are creating podcasts, if you are creating interviews or anything like that, let's say you are a team of you're in an organization where thought leadership through interviews is happening consistently. You don't let that podcast live and die on the podcast platform. You ideally will also record the podcast, and then you'll take video clips from that podcast and you will reshare those video clips on LinkedIn. And you're going to tag the people who were mentioned in the podcast. You're going to tag the company that was mentioned because they're going to interact with it. They're going to share it and they're going to spread it on their channels as well. That's what you're going to do. If you have a text post that you have created, let's say you've taken the time to create a status update on LinkedIn. It's pure text, nothing but text. And it actually just came out of one of those original blog posts that you created. You're going to take that same content and you're going to turn it into a carousel. You're going to turn it into a document, into a slide. And once it's there, people will engage with it in that way. So in this example, you can see I took a post that I published that was just very straightforward. A modern SEO strategy isn't just getting links. You should also consider these things. And then we took that and we turned it into a slide deck that we were able to then re-upload just a few weeks later. And guess what? We could turn that also into a blog post, into a video, etc. That is the power of creating once and distributing forever. If you are someone or work at an organization that is constantly producing and publishing proprietary data that is interesting to your audience, the biggest mistake that you can make is think that when you go live with your state of remote work, the state of sales, the state of crypto, the state of NFTs, you go live with a very data-driven asset. The biggest mistake you can make is think that the day that it goes live is the most important date for that content. It's not. The most important date is every single day you take elements from that piece and you republish them with an interesting spin, with an interesting angle, where you're taking sections of it and you're sharing it just like this, where you're taking all of that data and you're sharing it as LinkedIn updates with a visual, where you're taking it and sharing it as a Twitter thread, specifically around a key data point. That is what you should be looking at. And you also have to remember that the content that you publish on one channel doesn't live and die on that channel. A tweet can be screenshot and then shared on LinkedIn with a little bit of additional context. And as you can see in this one, the amount of engagement that this piece got was over 18,000 likes, over 600 comments. And it is a screenshot from one platform shared over to the next. Create once, distribute forever. That is the model and that is the opportunity. Everyone thinks about how difficult it is to do this. But folks, when you have a blog post that you've already published, some of you have published 5 blog posts this week. Some of you have published 5 blog posts this month. Some of you have published 20 blog posts this year, this quarter. Take some of that content and re-upload it directly to the various platforms. LinkedIn has a publishing platform. You can upload that content directly to LinkedIn. You can republish directly to medium.com. That is what you have an opportunity to do. Create once, distribute forever. You know the model has flipped. It's no longer create content rules everything around me. It is now dream. Distribution rules everything around me. If you embrace that model, it will help you drive meaningful results. And those articles can eventually become videos, right? So when you take that blog post, you take a piece of content that you've created, you can then re-upload it to LinkedIn. You can then take that content and turn it into a YouTube video. And then that YouTube video that you've developed, you can then embed inside of another article. You can take the content that has already been developed and embed it in something that is already created, right? If you have a blog post on a topic, you can now embed that video that you created on the back of a blog post into another blog post. It gets really meta. But again, that's because when you distribute forever, you can literally do it forever. Create once, distribute forever. Another place in which you can do it is niche communities. And I think niche communities is the place in which you can do it the most successfully across all channels. Someone asked, are you able to do this in e-commerce? 100%. In e-commerce, there are tons of communities that are targeted, and especially are people who are interested in certain topics. So if I'm selling something specifically to a community group, I can go into those communities and I can distribute my content to them, and they're going to get value out of it day in and day out, and they're going to be seeing my brand on the back of it. So let's say I'm trying to connect with engineers. I could go to a community like Hacker News. I can go in there and start submitting my content to that community. I can sort the content first, though, by top posts. And what I'm going to find is trends. I'm going to try to find trends around what type of content these people want. I can go into a Bitcoin forum and do the same thing. What are the topics that people in this forum and in this community are looking for content on? Can I create it? Can I develop that content? That's what you're going to be looking for. There's other places that you can go as well. Not a lot of people are aware of things like Stack Exchange, but it is a community that is thriving. Over 100 million monthly visitors that go into Stack Exchange, and they're talking about very technical topics. They're talking about information security. They're talking about biology. They're talking about physics. They're talking about stoicism. They're talking about all of these different topics across a wide range. And what you can do is go into these communities, learn what type of content they want, and then give it back to them. One of my favorite communities, though, is Reddit. I love Reddit. It is, without question, the one channel that I love more than any. And some folks would say, okay, Reddit's interesting, Ross. Like, I hear you, but I am terrified of Reddit. I get it. I have been blocked on Reddit. I've been banned, and I'm a Redditor first and foremost, but I've been banned off of Reddit because I've been in there and I used it the wrong way. But after you spend time and after you learn and you understand the importance of getting value, you're less likely to be banned and you're more likely to be on the front page. I've been on the front page more than 10, 12 times on the back of Reddit. So why should you use it? Because Reddit gets a ton of traffic and is not just a fringe site that you should ignore. It's actually a channel that people want to use to get access to your information. Foundation recently did a study and we analyzed the top 150 different subreddits across all of Reddit. We scraped all of the content, we scraped all of the posts, and what we found was that the vast majority of content that rose to the top was actually links. What does that mean for marketers? It means that people want our links. They want the links to the content that we've created, but we just have to ensure that the content we're submitting to these communities is high value, that this is content that these people will want. And if we can do that, then we will win. So you have to understand that and embrace that. Now you might be thinking, okay, Ross, but how can I ensure I don't get blocked on Reddit? It's a simple trick. When you go to a subreddit is essentially a niche community on Reddit. You're going to go into that community and you're going to sort the content by top posts. And when you sort the content by top posts, you're going to start to analyze and look for trends. What type of content do people in this community want consistently? When I go into a subreddit called Our Entrepreneurship, I can quickly see trends that people in the entrepreneurship subreddit, that community, want a certain type of content. When I go into the barbecue subreddit, I can see that people in that community want photos of food. When I go into the futurology community, like you're looking at here, I can see that people in that community love to talk about Elon Musk. They want to talk about that stuff. So I can go into those communities and create and distribute content that I know is going to be relevant to them. Create once, distribute forever. You have to figure out where your audience is spending time first and foremost. But then once you do that, you can start to spread your content in those channels. Whether it's Reddit, whether it's Quora, you can spread your content where your audience is spending time. If I am trying to connect with entrepreneurs, I'm trying to elevate my brand as it relates to CRM or something like that, sales, startups, etc., I could go to a site like Quora and type in startup. And then I'm going to see a bunch of questions that people are answering and viewing. You can see this one has 214,000 views. This one has 414,000 views. I can see that these questions are getting tons and tons of views. Why? Because Quora is one of the most frequently visited sites and referred sites through Google. So this is capturing, again, search traffic. So if you want to establish yourself in the SERP, there's multiple ways to do it, and Quora is actually one of them. You can start to answer questions that are already ranking in Google, just like Jason Lemkin has done. Jason Lemkin runs a Saskster Ventures. It's a event company as well as an investment firm, and they target SaaS. They target founders in that space. So I can go and find questions on sales, and I can answer those questions, but I can link to my own content on my site in these questions. Why? Because when people start to land on this question via Google or via Quora native users, they're going to then see, oh, this is a very valuable answer from Jason, from Ross, from whoever. I'm going to click on this link, and now I'm going to learn more by going to their URL. Then at the end of the post, you're going to also plug, here are a few more tactical ideas. You can do this consistently with all of the content that you've produced. Think about the last 5 pieces of content that you've published. If they are truly valuable to your audience, it's very likely that somewhere on the internet, somebody has asked a question that is related to that content. And if you can go into that question and answer it with a link, also going back to your stuff, tons of value. Remember, create once, distribute forever. Another opportunity that I think a lot of people are sleeping on is the rise of newsletters. Imagine, for example, that you decided that you were going to find a handful of newsletters that your audience was already subscribed to. You reach out to those newsletters, to the people behind them, and you say, hey, would you be able to feature our content in your newsletter? Because you already have 10,000, 5,000, 8,000 subscribers. I would love for you to feature us in your newsletter. Maybe you just sponsor the newsletter. Maybe you just do it natively and you say, hey, I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine. We'll feature you in ours, you feature us in yours. Create once, distribute forever. You don't have to go native to these platforms like Substack to do it either. You can go to good old fashioned Google and you can type in newsletter and CTO, and it will show you the newsletters that CTOs are subscribed to. And then you go into these articles, you find what newsletters CTOs are subscribed to, or your target audience. Again, there's tons of newsletters for moms, tons of newsletters for physicists, there's tons of newsletters for CIOs, marketers, API developers, you name it, there's a newsletter for them. You find them, you sponsor them, you reach out, build relationships, and you're able to create once and distribute forever. But that's not the only place in which you can distribute content. You can also go into Slack communities. Slack is not just a productivity tool. It is not just a place for you to communicate with other peers when we're remote. That is not the only use of Slack. In fact, there are communities showing up every single day on Slack where people are coming together to talk about design. People are coming together to talk about music, coming together to talk about backlinks. People are coming together on Slack the same way that they come together on Facebook groups to discuss things that are interesting to them. What does that mean for you? It means that you can identify, again, a community that you want to reach out to, connect with, and you can start to distribute content in these communities. You can share your links, you can promote your content, you can sponsor the Slack communities, etc. Create once, distribute forever. Earlier, I saw a few people talking about medium.com, another great play, but I would challenge you. I believe that Medium isn't exactly a great place to host and live your blog. I think your blog should live on your site. I think that is where it should be first and foremost. But Medium is an opportunity for you to kind of view it the same way we used to view guest blogging, where after your content has gone live on your website, 5 days, 5 weeks, 8 days later, you can republish that content on medium.com, but as a guest post. You're going to reach out to an existing publication, and you can use this site, toppub.xyz, to find top publications that exist that you can submit your content to. And then you're going to reach their audience on the back of it. That is what happens when you create once and distribute forever. We have covered a ton in the last few minutes, and some of you might be thinking, bro, what is right for me? You just covered Reddit, Facebook groups, Quora, Stack Exchange, Slack, all of these things. I'm overloaded and I have no idea what to do. Go back to the fundamentals, right? Go back to the fundamentals of first figuring out exactly where your audience is spending time, right? You need to start with the research. You need to start by understanding them. And then you need to have a fundamental truth, and belief that you should create once and distribute forever. Because this isn't even all of the channels in which you can distribute your content. If you want all of them, I have a distribution checklist that I strongly want everyone to check out. Just go to rawsimmonds.com/distro pack, and you will be able to get this for free. It's a free checklist on the different ways that you can spread your content online, whether it's Facebook, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's Twitter, whether it's Reddit, Quora, etc. The distro pack will give you everything you need to distribute your content. And I hope that this free guide will support you in making sure that you can embrace that idea of creating once and distributing forever. Because if you can do that, it will fundamentally change the way that you view marketing and the way that you ultimately are successful. Because at the end of the day, folks, here's something you have to remember. The competition that you are up against is going to continue to rise. There are more companies, more creators, more brands coming up every single day to create more content. So I give you a massive shout out for just showing up today, because you have decided that you are going to start laying the bricks today for the things that you need to do tomorrow. If you want to be successful, you need to be continuously investing in things like this, just making the time to learn to stay ahead of the curve, because your competition is contributing to the noise. And if you want to embrace that idea of dream, distribution ruling everything around you, education is going to be key. You need to continue to educate yourself. You need to continue to invest the time and energy to figure out how can we be better at getting the value that we've already created, that is already collecting dust, but that our audience needs. And how can we get that content in front of them? And if you do that consistently, week in, week out, month after month, quarter after quarter, decade after decade, I can promise you, when you look back at your career and you say, look, I invested in myself, I invested to really figure out how to be a better creator, a marketer, specialist, strategist, etc. You look back at your career and you ask yourself, was all of that time actually worth it? You're going to say, you better believe it. Thank you so much, folks. You've been great. I hope you appreciate my puns. If you want that distribution checklist, check it out and definitely connect with me on social channels. I would love to connect with you further.
Yeah, wow. That's all I can say. Thanks, Ross. That was amazing. There's so much in there. There's so much value in that talk. And just to give everyone a heads up, I think we posted in the chat, but you're going to want to go rewatch this, right? Because there's so much in there. And we're going to make sure we send out the video with links to all this great stuff Ross has too, like the distro pack and everything else.
Love it. Awesome. So yeah, I'll stick around for Q&A if there's any questions that anyone would like to have dive into. I appreciate all the feedback. I see it in there. Pamela, thank you so much. Nick, Bridget, Rob, Doug, Alice, thank you. Susanna, Nicole, Michelle, thank you all so much. I appreciate the kind words. It means a lot.
Cool. Yeah. So I want to give a shout out to the BuzzSumo team. They've been reading through the chat, and there's a very active chat, which is exciting to see. And we wrote down some of the questions people are asking. So Ross, do you mind if I just kind of read them off to you?
Let's do it. Let's jump in.
Let's jump in. So a good question from Alicia. So should the original content be published on the blog? Do you still see that as a starting point?
100%. Yeah, 100%. You have to start with the house. And at Foundation, our company is literally named Foundation because we think of it like a house. And your house is your website, and you should publish your content there, right? And then once you have the house in order, once you have, my Canadian accent is probably coming out now as I say house or hosts, depending on how you say it. But once you have the house in order, yes, that is when you are able to distribute it. But you do want to publish your content on your blog first and foremost.
Cool. Another question. What about niche platforms or newer platforms like Discord and Telegram? Are these things you see as part of your distribution strategy?
100%, 100%. Discord is one of those channels that I think a lot of people are sleeping on because it came out of the gaming community and it's getting a lot of traction within the NFT and crypto space. But Discord is essentially Slack, right? It's just got a new skin on it, and I think it might actually have came out around the same time as Slack, but it's essentially Slack. So yes, Discord is an amazing play. I've seen a lot of brands finding success there where they're sharing YouTube videos specifically in their Discord communities. And I think there's a ton of value for folks to unlock there. Again, it comes back to one fundamental requirement, which is understand where your audience is. Once you know that, then you go into those channels and you distribute.
Nice. This is a question from Shane. I think it kind of tails in right into that, is how do you identify these communities? And I can jump in and say, you follow someone like Ross, let them do the hard work for you. But, Ross, do you have anything to kind of throw into there too?
Yeah, so Foundation's got a ton of strategists and folks that would do this work for you. But if you can't do that, you use tools just like BuzzSumo, right? Like I talked about it briefly around Facebook Audience Insights, but you use things like BuzzSumo. You use a lot of the other MarTech tools to kind of put together and figure out like where your audience is spending time. And if you don't feel like you can do it using third-party tools, the best person to ask is your ideal audience. So you use some of the tools that allow you to ask them questions. You have on your website an opportunity for you to ask a question. You do a survey, you run that directly on your site. Or maybe you reach out to some of your ideal customers and you ask them, hey, is there an opportunity for us to have a chat with you? And then you ask them, where are you spending time? What channels do you use, et cetera? So there's a lot of fear amongst marketers to talk to people, but that's who we serve. So let's talk to them.
Nice. A quick question that goes back to one of the, I think, first few slides. What is vertical video?
Yeah. So back in the day, I'm dating myself. Everybody would go to YouTube and you would want videos that were horizontal, aka landscape. And then eventually you would see somebody upload to YouTube a vertical video where they recorded it with their phone and it would be chopped on the side and it was all blurry. And we would all get very mad and we would be in the comments saying, flip your phone, flip your phone. Why are you recording it vertical, right? Like we get so upset about that. But now it has become natural. When we look at a video on our phone, we don't flip our phone to watch it. We're okay consuming the content in the vertical format. We're okay consuming content in that story style. So that's what vertical video is. It's the shift from going horizontal to now vertical, and also being okay with people not flipping their phones to watch a video.
Nice. Next one up. I think it's a pain point a lot of us have felt in the marketing community. In at Chuck wrote it, it's hard to grow your own Facebook group.
Yeah.
And it's clearly really valuable. You know, like how do you? I know I'm asking you to do a lot. Just a quick question, but like how do you approach that problem?
Yeah. So if you are going to go in on a Facebook group, I believe you have to view it the same way that you would view a community manager, and you actually have to put a role on it. I think it's very important that you make that investment if you're really serious about it and you're going to treat it like a community manager. Now, if you do not have the ability to put a full-time community manager on it, but you do have somebody managing social, I would consider and think about whether or not there's an opportunity to divvy up their role so that it's split between managing a Facebook group and some of those social media platforms, so they're spread on both. That would be an approach to consider. And then the final piece would be, don't forget to take a cheat code and acquire or reach out to existing groups that already have scale and leverage what they've already done. If you do not have in your DNA as an organization to manage that type of a community, why not partner with somebody who does have that skill set and work with them to tell your story and distribute your content?
Nice. And I'm seeing a couple of questions come in. I'm going to kind of group a few of them together.
Okay.
You drove at this a bit with the poll, and we asked you how much time you spend publishing and creating versus distributing. You know, we all have like limited time. You know, depending on some of us, you know, have different roles and different hats to wear too.
Yeah.
So how do you approach that? I know there's no straight answer, but how do you approach that problem of trying to set how much time you spend at each piece?
Yeah. So the vast majority of the world spends 80% creating, the rest distributing. I think that's broken, wrong model, not the right approach. I think good brands do 50-50. I think excellent brands do 20% creation and the rest is distributing. Now, some of you are thinking that makes no sense. You can't distribute if you're not creating. Well, here's the reality. Remember the saying, create once, distribute forever. A piece of content that I create in January 2019 can still be distributed in January 2022. Over the time of January 2019 and January 2022, 2 years have passed, maybe 3 years have passed, a lot of time. And in that time, I'm still amplifying and promoting that same piece of content. So that piece of content that may have taken me 5 hours to create has gotten way more over the last 3 years than 5 hours to amplify, because I'm writing a Twitter thread about it every quarter. I'm promoting it through an email every other month, every other week. I'm sending out tweets about it. I'm sharing it on my Instagram story. I'm answering questions with it. So you are able to use more time to promote that content. So I think one of the fundamental things that people need to realize is you probably already have enough content. Just distribute it. Spend the time distributing that content that you have.
Nice. I think another quick question I saw that came in was around paid distribution methods versus free distribution methods.
Love it. Yeah.
What's your stance on that?
Yeah. So I think we as an industry have realized the value of paid distribution. And I am grateful for that because I think paid distribution is not going anywhere anytime soon. I think it's massively important. We should all be including that when we talk about distribution as a key function here. The goal of this is to think a little bit more outside of the box around how to distribute your channels, your content, without always having to ring the cash register. Because when we do go through things like the early stages of a pandemic and advertising budgets get slashed, you have to ask yourself, what channels and what ways can we reach our audience that don't require a lot of spend? And what's awesome about organic is the fact that it's just time, it's just energy, it's just actually putting in the effort, and you can distribute that forever. So that the key is, yes, paid distribution is massively important. I think there's no question that you should be allocating some of your distribution budget, and depending on where you are, probably 50, if not more, percent to paid distribution, and the rest to the more organic sweat equity type of distribution efforts.
Cool. And I think this will be the last question. I've seen some variations of this come in. I think a big question is, you're creating this content, you're publishing your blog, now you're distributing it. What does that time frame look like for you? I'm sure there's some experimenting that goes into it, but when do you start republishing it? Because you don't want to just wear your audience out right away, I'm guessing.
No, yeah, you want to spread it out. So you want to press publish on a piece of content, let's say day one, and it's taken you anywhere from 15 to 20 hours to create this piece. It's valuable, it's amazing, it's great. That day that it goes live, you're going to go publish it on all of your various social media platforms. You're going to send it out as an email to all of your key contacts, your email list, etc. You might even update your signature in your email so people are getting it and they see it. All of that's going to happen on day one. On day two, though, you've already planned the fact that you're going to do a Twitter thread on that piece. You also have already planned that you're going to reach out to a few newsletters and get them to feature it, all of those things. So you start to plan, and in the distro pack that I had shared, it will give you some insights on how to do this a little bit better, but you're going to be thinking about how you can distribute your content on these channels staggered. Right? Like, you don't want to do it all at once. A lot of people will make the mistake of listening to me speak right now, and they'll say, we have to distribute everything. And then they're going to put up 50 tweets in one day. They're going to put up 20 Facebook updates and 10 LinkedIn updates. And then a bunch of people are going to unfollow them, and their feelings are going to be hurt. And they're going to say, Ross, distribution doesn't work. No, you have to spread it out. So you have to use tools like Buffer, Hootsuite, et cetera, to schedule your content. All the tweets aren't going to go out at once. You're going to schedule those things out. So that is the key. You do want to space it out, but you literally can do it forever, or at least until you quit or don't have a job or you die. One of the other things. So you can do it almost forever.
Nice. That's amazing to hear. And I think if there's some other questions, we'll make sure we can kind of get around to a few more of them, or we'll look after the webinar, see what we can answer. I just want to thank everyone for joining today. It was awesome to see the engagement on the call, how active the chat box was. And Ross, just thank you so much for joining. Give us a lot to think about, I think.
No worries. Thank you all for having me. Really appreciate the time. If you do have any questions, send me a DM or a tweet, add me to LinkedIn, connect on all of your favorite platforms. I am there and I would love to connect. BuzzSumo, major shout out to you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate you, and keep elevating the content culture. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you. And one quick piece of housekeeping. I mentioned this before, we're absolutely seeing a webinar. A link to watch the recording. We're going to send out the deck, and we're also going to send out a survey. So let us know how much you enjoyed this call, what we should talk about in the future. We just really love and appreciate your feedback. And again, just thanks for joining us today.